So, Marieluise, it's a great pleasure and great honor to have you here in this studio. You have a fascinating political career, and with you, I want to talk about German politics, Ukraine, and Russia. And my first question is about political climate in Germany in the light of the Ukrainian crisis. I was in Germany this year, almost on the height of the crisis, and I could sense and see that political elites and political opinions are very divided along the lines of the Ukrainian crisis. What is the situation now and where this divide is at the moment?
When Maidan started, there was a lot of sympathy for the first weeks because everything was easy, seemed to be easygoing. You could see the concerts, and then the Russian propaganda started that there is right-wing forces running Maidan and that there's anti-Semitic voices on Maidan. This became very strong and was adopted by our left-wing parties, and it was to a certain extent shaking up public opinion and making people feel insecure of who you are dealing with on the Maidan. But still, I think the majority was being sympathetic, but also there was already a part of the public that said, the Russians being not amused about this EU accession politics, we must understand that because we must respect Russian interests. Now, as the story went on and obviously Russia decided to punish Ukraine for not being willing to go into the Eurasian Union and annexing Crimea, you actually could see that there was Russian aggression, but still there was a feeling, wouldn't you have to take into account that Crimea always has been Russian? They have their fleet there, and it's, yes, according to international law, it's not correct, but there must be some understanding for Russia. So there was a hesitating debate, hesitating whether strong sanctions really would be correct or whether wouldn't it be better to stay in dialogue, not to escalate, not to tease Kremlin. And actually this division in public opinion has been going on even after Donbass has been annexed, which again was never an open war, but Kremlin always managed to stay under the line where it could openly be seen that they were really involved very heavily.
When it comes to America-Germany cooperation and collaboration on this matter, Germany comes up in virtually every discussion on Capitol Hill here in the US Congress, and there is a mixture of American politicians expecting from Germany to do more, to be more proactive, and this dissatisfaction with how active Germany is, obviously. Do you feel that German leaders actually feel comfortable with this kind of expectations and pressure, or it's more of a burden for them?
Well, like I said, the German public does not really want to be drawn into a real conflict with Russia. And from what I learned here, neither does the United States. Who would want to be drawn into a conflict which even has military aspects to it now? And we see that Russia has been using military force, and our side is always declaring every day that we are not going to use military force. So I think the expectations which come from the United States towards Germany to be decided, at least on the question of sanctions, is being accepted. There once in a while is the say that, well, the Americans can easily talk about sanctions because they don't have so much economic connections with Russia as Germany and the European Union does, for example, Poland also. But I do see that, and I would say that Chancellor Merkel really has done her best to keep the European Union together, because you must know, yes, there is a division in the elites and in the public opinion how tough the sanctions should be towards Russia, but it's even more so with different states within EU. Italy, for example, is very hesitating. You have other countries who are not so close to Russia, who do not have the feeling the Ukraine is our business, and so you always have two poles to bring together, and this is what Chancellor Merkel did. You know, keeping Europe together on one side, and not giving Kremlin and Putin the success that they managed to divide EU. This, on the other side, has maybe made our steps of sanctions less strong than, according to what has happened, they should have been.
There is sometimes this talk of some kind of a special relationship between Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin. How do you think this, if this relationship exists, how do you think this affects decision making?
Well, she knows him very well. She knows his psychology. She has been raised in a dictatorship in the former DDR. He is a former KGB officer, so she knows how living under repression, what it means with the Russian people, with and how those who are part of the repressive system, how they act and how they psychologically move. And very obviously, Putin is openly nasty, and he even, which really stuns us, he even does not have any problems to really uttering open lies, like with Crimea, where all the time was said there's no Russian involvement, the soldiers there, they didn't wear any uniforms with signs, and after the Crimea had been annexed, Putin personally went into the public and said, well, our Russian soldiers have done a wonderful job. So she knows him well. She is a very rational person. She can be unemotional in a positive way and concentrated, and I think she knows what is maybe not behind his face, but she knows that she really has to be tough with him, like he is tough and outspoken himself. And I think it's good, and I think he's respecting her.
You mentioned recently that you believe in deterrence in case of Russia as well. How do you think this concept is being handled now by the West and by Germany?
Well, what I see is that the tendency to hope that this nightmare is going to be over with is very big. The wish to not having to face a next step is overwhelmingly huge. The wish to come back to normal relations with Russia is very, very big. So we are disappointed again and again. You know, the Crimea was step number one. It took us a long time to be outspoken on the question that Russia was deeply, deeply, deeply involved in the Donbass, and that it was not a so-called separatist movement, just some people who were afraid that they would be losing their Russian language, which never was a topic, you know, because even 50% of Kiev is speaking Russian. So it took us a long time. We finally could not deny it anymore. But again, now with the Minsk negotiations, the hope that the fighting might end, and from what we hear, though, every day, it has not ended, and I'm not sure whether Putin is not maybe just waiting now and actually decided if there is a next opportunity, he will take the next step, especially since Crimea is in a terrible shape. The winter is coming. He needs the landway, and this actually means Kherson, and this would mean a further part of the coast along the Black Sea.
So if we're talking about, if we're talking beyond eastern Ukraine, there is fear that Vladimir Putin might be interested in Baltic States as well, and it was voiced, these concerns were voiced multiple times. Do you feel that his rationale would allow him to go further?
I do not know. I think nobody knows. Maybe he doesn't even know himself at the moment. What really disturbed me was the fact that a few days ago in Estonia there obviously has been Russian secret security force, I don't know, they have been going over the border into Estonia and captured a Secret Service guy and took him over to Russia. Now, this very obviously is a step to try how serious is the West. Until there has not been an answer. I know that the American president went to Estonia, held a speech, said Article 5 is that the NATO countries are standing together, and if one is being attacked, we all feel attacked. I hope that Putin does not try to see, are they really going to make it NATO? Or are they so weak meanwhile that I can even tease them and dismantle them at that point? So it is dangerous, and I think Europe really has to understand that the war in Ukraine is not only a Ukrainian matter, but that Kremlin really heads towards Europe. There is other signs which we should take very serious. Marine Le Pen, which we know does not want a united Europe, does not want a multicultural Europe. She has close ties to Kremlin. She is visiting Naryshkin, the president of the Duma. All the extremists, the right-wing and extremist Western European parties went on Crimea when there was this illegal referendum to watch it, which was UKIP from the United States, which was from Austria, which was Jobbik from Hungary. So there is obviously steps by Russia being taken to support those forces within the EU that want to destroy the EU from the inside, and Kremlin wants to destroy it from the outside. So I think we'd better watch out. It's not only a Ukrainian question.
Speaking about Europe united and whole, Ukraine has very clear European aspirations, but it was said multiple times that EU is not ready for enlargement anytime soon. What kind of European future do you see for Ukraine, in what shape and form?
When the Eastern Neighborship this program was being shaped, it had the idea to draw those countries closer to EU without giving them the EU perspective. It has a lot to do with the financial crisis, with the enlargement fatigue within Europe itself, and the problems that a EU getting bigger and bigger is more complicated to handle. So I think this has changed, and the West and EU has understood that there needs to be a Ukraine perspective. The conservative European parties now have, from what I learned, said that there must be a clear EU perspective for Ukraine. But of course, on the other side, everybody knows that in order to become the candidacy status, it's not just a political will, it's benchmarks that have to be fulfilled. And Ukraine is a long way away from those benchmarks. We know And that was the reason why the people went on Maidan. There is no rule of law. The state's institutions are in a terrible shape. The corruption is all over. So the economical situation, the necessity to reform and modernize the economy is huge. So it's going to be a long way anyway. And if Poroshenko now says, I'm heading for 2020, that's only 6 years. That's not very much. It's a very, very short-term perspective which he's taken for the country. The problem, though, is if Ukraine would be left alone and left in peace, they would definitely start. But what is happening now, a country being at war and having had a next part of the country and another part practically almost annexed, and nobody knows when it's going to, where it's going to go on, how shall it recover? And all the nasty parts of the country, which brought the people out in the street, are remaining because there is not the force to really start this nation building which is necessary. And this is the tragedy of the country. There is people who are talking about the possibility of a failed state. And if it turns out like that, we must know that this is our responsibility. We have to have something to do with it.
And this quick transition for the last question to Russia. Mikhail Khodorkovsky was in Washington this week, and in a speech that he made at the Freedom House, he signaled his intention to kind of challenge a little bit the status quo in Russian politics, and he said, Russia has been wasting time these past 10 years. Now is when we must begin to make up this lost time. You were one of the German politicians who lobbied very hard for Khodorkovsky's release. Do you feel that there is political future for him in Russia?
I can't tell you. Nobody knows what the future of the system, the regime of Putin is. I think this is, showing into the future and making guesses. I think that the conflicts outside, which Kremlin is obviously almost interested in, has something to do with the weakness of the country and the regime inside. The economical data are horrific, terrible. You know that young men in Russia have a life expectancy which is behind some states within Africa. If you look at the investments going down, there has definitely, it's a country living off selling oil and gas and not having a modern industry. Tell me one product which the two of you would say we want to have and it's been produced in Russia. It's not an Apple computer, it's not a car, it's, I don't know, not cosmetics or whatever it could be. So it is weak, but at the same time a weak imperium is dangerous at the same time. And what Putin did manage to do is really reform and strengthen the army. There was a lot of resources that went into modernizing the army. We in our democratic countries, our people tell us, please don't put so much money into the military. So again, you have this asymmetric situation. I do not know what the future of the regime is. If you close your eyes, there is possible nightmares for Russia, which mean the imperium is going to fall apart even more so. If I think about the North Caucasus, a big repression now, but at the same time, due to this repression, young men going into the mountains, linking to Islamic structures. There is talk about a caliphate in the northern Caucasus, and I think if you look at ISIS now, I don't know how you call it, they will see what's going on over there, and I do have the fantasy to think, well, ISIS linking to the Islamist movement in northern Caucasus is a fantasy which is terrible, but not totally impossible. So he has the east, where you have huge territories and almost no people in there. There is Chinese migration moving into the country. So I think what you can say, it's a big amount of instability. And instability is dangerous.
Thank you so much. I would not want to finish on this note, but I hope we will continue this conversation in the future with situation dynamic and dramatically changing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.